G'day, Doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. It's episode 56, and we've got a very special guest on today, Lee Addison, the Rugby League coach. You'll see in the links, all his links to everything about Rugby League, a former coach, assistant coach under Matty Elliott at the Penrith Panthers, and you're also at Manly as well, weren't you, Lee?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who was that with?
Desi,
yeah.
I went 3 years at Manly, coaching low grade, spent some time with Desi. Matthew Elliott, when I went over, really took me in his under his wing and spent some time with him. I remember one summer in particular, because I'd just started the job at St. Gregory's College as well. He let me train with the NRL team all through the summer, and I actually ended up jumping in a couple of training sessions and training with them, believe it or not. Paid for it later. But yeah, so that was a good time. Matt's great. Still in touch with Matt to this day. Des I'm not, but yeah, Matt Elliott definitely.
We all Canterbury fans, a lot of them are very angry at Des. I used to like watching Des mess with the media, and he's got this thing. But I just take every game as it comes and look at what I see. There's actually some really good stats from looking at teams around possession and completion rates from this year to last year, which is interesting as well, because it's no wonder the Titans have the highest completion rate in the competition under Des, but they're still struggling a lot. But I can tell you exactly right now, before we get into it, since they've stopped penalising the play the ball and letting people just play it through the legs, there's been a whole lot less.
Oh, it's nearly as bad as Super League with the play the balls now, and Super League's been like that for years. I'll tell you another one in the English Super League too that a lot of people miss is that the markers don't often stand square. They do it on purpose. They move off the mark, and Super League refs have missed that year on year on year. So once you lose the ruck from a refereeing perspective, then there becomes some problems in the game.
Bulldogs under Des were rarely square either, I remember. Look, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the Bulldogs. What's your thoughts? I know you're going to be. I've brought you on here because you're going to tell the truth in what you think. It may not appeal to what everyone wants to hear, and it may be proven wrong. And you're the first to admit when you're wrong, as well. But we've got some people will be commenting and chatting. Mike Cool, who's our statistician. Jamie Teasdale's on. G'day, Lucas. And Mike's apologised for not coming to the stream last week because he was doing his HSC. So welcome, guys. Mark O'Connell, g'day, Bulldogs fan. Mark's probably someone who'll ask you some questions, Lee. He's another statistician who loves the stats. He reckons the stats do not lie.
The stats, damn lies, and statistics. Is that the saying? Stats, damn lies, something like that.
They don't lie.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Yeah. It's late at night. Cool.
All right, Lee, let's get into it. In our preview for Manly, in your opinion, what are the Bulldogs doing differently than they were doing with Serrato last year? What's changed?
Do you remember the issue with the player that went to complain about the tough training?
Yeah, we did a massive podcast on it. I actually named him before anyone, we all knew who it was, but
I will not open that Pandora's box. But what was said by Gus and by Serraldo was that they were trying to build a certain type of culture at the club, and they stuck solidly with that culture that they were talking about. For those who can see me, I'm doing the inverted commas sign. I actually think their recruitment and also anybody who does a year in any kind of regime, you're always better the year after when you've had a summer break and you've reflected and things have gone into your subconscious mind and you come better prepared for the next season.
Yeah,
I think the recruitment this year plus the recruitment last year means they've got players now that can deliver Serraldo what he wants to happen on the field. So You asked me what they're doing differently. If you were to ask me what they're doing differently from most other teams, I would say not that much. I said on my podcast the other day that I feel that you could have swapped jerseys, the Warriors and the Bulldogs, and they'd be almost the same team because so many teams play with the same shapes. They have similar structures. They move the ball at similar times. What I believe I saw in the Dogs the other day is I think their core skills were quite good. And when I say core skills, I'm talking things like grip, pass, catch, carry. I'm talking about things like your hips being square at the line when you want to engage a defender and when you're passing the ball. I'm talking about numbers around the ball in terms of shapes. I'm talking about lines of run. I'm talking about defensive core skills. I'm talking about the ability to wrestle. All those things seem better and more consistent to me than they did 12 months ago. And they also seemed better and more consistent to me than they did against the Warriors in that game. And I think they beat the Warriors at the weekend because they were able to sustain what they were doing for much longer. And I don't know if you remember, the Warriors had a really good period for 12 minutes where I think they had the ball for 94% of the time.
Yeah.
And then just after that, they'd scored 12 points in that period. Just after that, they overplayed the hand a little bit. I remember the 5'8" Metcalf, I think it is, opened his hips up and mistimed the pass, and the runner mistimed his run. There were a few other things in and around that. And also a few players started falling off tackles when they were defending the football. Well, they're all core skill things. And when that 20-25 minute mark kicked in, the Warriors players had reverted to type a little bit. Now, if we look at the Warriors and the Bulldogs, both their coaches came out of the Penrith system. So this carbon copy, if you like, of both teams that I thought I noticed, that's not a surprise when you think that they both came out of that system. But it seemed to me that Seraldo and the Bulldogs are focusing more on those essentials that I've just discussed and prioritizing them more in training than Webster in recent weeks, because at the start of the year they were quite good, the Warriors, but they seem to have dropped off. So I would say that he's got the personnel that he needs to deliver what his team are delivering. I would also say he's coaching. Now, I've never doubted Seraldo's ability to coach. What I've doubted is that he was the second coming of Christ, that he was anointed by so many people, and there's reasons for that. There's player agents who become coach agents, who influence media men, etc., etc. Yeah, I've never doubted him as a coach, and people, particularly on my Facebook, as you know, thought I was having a go at Seraldo.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, it was more that he was anointed, and that was that. And I think if people remember rightly, Potter didn't do such a bad job, and then in the first year of Seraldo's time, they look so far off in so many ways. I mean, they've still got a similar defensive system, yet 12 months ago they couldn't sustain it. They couldn't stay in a defensive line. Whereas now they move up, they paddle quite well together. The term paddle means they sort of stay on the toes and don't necessarily jump out of the line. There are weaknesses in the team that can be exploited. I think you're going to potentially ask me a question about that later, but yeah, they're just better. They're better for the trot last year, and they're better for the people that they've got at the club right now.
Yeah, I do notice. Max King sort of reiterates what you said, is that when Seraldo come in, that was the second new system he had to learn since he arrived at the club, and he actually, learned two systems when he first come to the club. So, and that was hard because he said he really struggled defensively, and that was what he prided himself on. Yeah. But he's been wonderful this year. We've hardly seen those like that line break that Capewell got. We haven't really seen that against the Bulldogs all year. It's happened only a few times. That's something that we've really, and I think they just alternate well. So you've got those small guys with the line speed who hit the attacker on the advantage line, and then they alternate really, really well and fill the space. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they were trying to do that last year as well, but they just didn't have the, I don't know, the ability to do that. And I could see they didn't have the fitness. I don't think. I think the fitness is definitely a lot better in the side, and when you believe as well, I think that drives you a little bit further.
Yeah. Mentality is a huge thing, because I know if you know yourself, if you're doing a day's work and you feel you're not feeling it, your day will drag mentally. You just struggle. You think you're more tired than you are. If you're happy, if you're refreshed, if you're positive, you'll fly through the day. And so imagine what that does to your body when you're trying to play rugby league or trying to train for rugby league. So
100%. So look, what do you think is the key to beating the Bulldogs?
The first key is you got to play for 80 minutes. So because of that newly found mental toughness, both through acquisition of individuals and also training regime, you've got to stay with the Bulldogs for 80 minutes. They're not going to disappear, I don't think.
Yeah.
Number two, with every defensive system that a team applies, there's always a yin and a yang. So there's no definitive defensive system that everyone should follow. Otherwise, everyone would be following it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's up and out fans, there's up and in fans, there's mixtures, etc., etc. Bulldogs are playing quite clearly an up and in system. When you are up and in, you spread your defense line further. Your defensive spacings are wider between each man. When I coach against that, I ask my first one or two runners in the set to target certain areas in the defensive line, use footwork at the line, crash to the floor, play it as quickly as they can within reason, not sacrificing a tackle. And on top of that, I must add that the Bulldogs were quite chesty in their tackle technique. So that lends itself to that.
Grab and hold.
Grab and hold, which
and
is
then
common,
drive back.
Right?
Yeah.
That plus the spacings, if a team executes that on the first couple of plays, statistically, tackle 2 is the most important. Okay. So if you want to get a good set in attack in terms of go forward and play the ball speed, tackle 2 is the key. If you want to kill a set defensively, tackle 2 is the key. So if you can do that, and then I think you have to probe the Dogs either 1+1. So what I mean by that is a half moving the ball to somebody else a bit wider, or +2. So +1 or +2. And you have to really hit holes, just like Capewell did in the New Zealand Warriors side at the weekend. And I think one of the real weaknesses of the Bulldogs is the 3 in on each side. So you've got your wing, you've got your centre, and then you've got whoever defends on the inside. And most teams tend to have halves defending there, and then a back row or edge defender
Toby
inside
and Matt.
them. So that's the weakness there. Forget the names of the players, as I told you before.
Toby
I'm terrible with names. The centre
and Burton.
Yeah, the centre kept rushing in as well on one side. So that's where Capewell found his chance. And there was a few other times as well where that was probed. But the key thing I'm trying to get across is because of their spacings, and if you get them going backwards, they're going to struggle to close them spacings in good time sometimes. But you've got to stay with them for 80 minutes. And the third thing, you have to make your good ball, so you're attacking football wherever you decide to do it. Let's just say the other half of the field for now. You've got to make sure you're bringing people back in on the angle, even if you don't use them. You've got to get the Bulldogs defenders stood, flat-footed. You've got to make sure that you had variety. So every time you turn up in that area, you're not doing the same thing all the time, because the Bulldogs will read that. Because I think they are now, they have more football IQ in that team, so they can adapt and readjust.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to have one of those games where you put your body on the line. You know you're probably going to get hit sometimes, but you just go into hit holes, put a dent in the line there, then move the ball a bit wider, put a dent in the line there, and I think it will pay dividends. And another thing that the Warriors did the other day when they held the ball for 97% of the time in that 12 minutes or whatever it was, 94%, they held the ball. And then it all changed when the Warriors dropped the ball with the Fanua-Blake potential strip. That's when the momentum changed in the game. So you have to stay on top of things and just keep turning the ball over in the Bulldogs area of the field. I don't think it's going to be that hard for the good teams to beat them, unfortunately for you. So, and I think, for example, the way the Penrith and the Storms play, the Melbourne Storm play, they keep turning the ball over at the right end of the field more often than not. Roosters have obviously probably got the best attacking side in the competition, if we're honest, in terms of personnel. So I don't think there's going to be a Bulldogs premiership this year. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Look, many of us would have given anything to be in this position, but like typical Bulldogs fans, we're going to be devastated if we lose. We've got 44 comments that have come through. Just to give us a break. G'day, everyone. Sorry, getting to the comments is going to be hard today. So I'll just go through them. So Michael's doing his last time the Bulldogs won the premiership, the Richmond Tigers won the AFL Wooden Spoon in 2024. Richmond Tigers have won the AFL Wooden Spoon. So if you heard about all the things, there's about 80 different things that are lining up from 2004 to 2024.
And the fact it's 4, so they played in the 2014 NRL Grand Final. Yeah.
Last time the Bulldogs won an away game in New Zealand, they made the grand final. So g'day, everyone. We'll go through them a bit later. The grand finals on the 6th of October, and Roosters have won 3 grand finals on the 6th of October. Oh, no. G'day, John Pierre. Welcome back. Just saying hello to everyone as I can. There's a lot on there. Yeah, guys, we've got a lot to talk about with Lee tonight, so I'm not going to get to everyone's. If you've got some questions, put them up there, and we might get through to them. Let's get back to it. So, Lee, how do you think Canterbury what are they doing really well to prevent opposition teams sort of doing what's working for the opposition team? So, for example, we saw the way that the Warriors went into the contact, especially that first set. They just rolled up the field. They pinpointed Marnie and our small guys to make sure they hit them first, so they were able to bounce off and get down low, and got the roll through, which is what their game is based on. Ours is a little bit similar, except we don't get the post contact that the Warriors get. We're last in that. We're smaller. What do you think? What do you think? What are the Dogs doing that's preventing this from happening?
I'll go back to my comment about the mental toughness. So a game lasts 80 minutes, or about 95 if the bunker get involved too much. And during that period of that 80 minutes, quite often when two teams are evenly matched, it basically goes, one team has a good 20 minutes, then the other team have a good 20 minutes, and then the same in the second half. Okay?
The momentum.
Yeah. The further you get up the ladder, so the better the opposition teams are, the more you've got to expect that when the opposition has their 20 minutes, they're going to give you something to worry about. Yeah. Okay? It's in that 20 minutes when the opposition have their 20 minutes that the Bulldogs have probably got the edge now that they didn't have 12 months ago. So I just explained in the previous question how Adam Fanua-Blake fumbled the ball probably should have done a captain's challenge, and they probably would have got the strip. Even that is a discipline thing too, and a culture thing, because if it was obvious, somebody should have said it's obvious, and Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Warriors. And basically, if you look at the game from that point of view, from that point in the game, the Bulldogs dominated most of it after that. And even when the Warriors had their sniff in the second half, the Bulldogs came back over them. So I think they're better at turning the screw at that moment in time. And I think their defense as well doesn't capitulate easily. So the attack, if their attack isn't as nuanced as maybe it should be to defeat a team like the Bulldogs, they will easily deal with it. Whereas, like I said, your Penriths and your Roosters and your Storms will probably have something in the tank and in their armoury to break it open a little bit more. So I do think their defensive line, they're really confident in their defensive systems. I do think they are probably still one of the best defensive teams in the comp statistically. So that speaks to that theory too.
All right. Well, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. I just want to talk about a couple of statistics around where Canterbury are a lot better. So set completion, we're still rather low at 78%. With the Broncos down at 76, Panthers up in the top three, 82 down to 76. But
can I just say something about? Sorry to interrupt. Can I just say something about the completion? I do think that speaks to they've still got a few extra players that they've got to recruit that can execute a bit better under some pressure.
Yeah,
and I think that's why, because when your completion rate isn't the best, it's not just knock-ons. Sometimes it's passes that go astray.
Yeah.
Or a penalty you give away with the ball or something like that. So, yeah, that is going to be a problem for them moving forward.
So we've increased 3% on last year, and the average of the competition has increased a lot, which is what I was saying before. I think there's a lot less play the ball errors than there was due to the fact that they're not trying to get their foot on it.
No.
And I think that's helped keep the ball in play a little bit longer. But there's a key stat there, possession. 2023, the Bulldogs were down with the Roosters at 48%. 2024, we're number one at 52%.
Yeah.
I think I'll ask you what you think it is, but I think the Bulldogs, taken from a little bit of the Shane Walker and Ben Walker coaching at Ipswich, and I've had a good chat with Shane Walker about that when I ran into his car one day. Yeah, a good bloke. He just popped out the dint and said, "No dramas, mate. All good."
Oh, nice. That's all right.
Yeah, what a guy. And then let me ask him questions for 20 minutes. So,
I wish that happened to me when I bumped in someone's car about 3 months ago.
Oh, no. But the Bulldogs are passing the ball a lot. And so our completions aren't high, but our possession and our time with the ball is very high compared to other sides. And it's probably no coincidence that Bulldogs, Panthers, and Warriors lead that stat, because they do play a similar style of game.
I was impressed with how expansive they were in good ball the other day, the Dogs, in terms of shifting the ball side to side quite a bit. But also I was impressed by the variety that they offered. So they didn't just do that and hope that it worked eventually. They did change it. They played a bit closer, a bit tighter and things like that. So,
yeah,
they've improved in that area too. And again, the caliber of player and what I said about the core skill application in training. So these things do add up.
Well, I don't know if you'll know this, but this might sort of explain that a bit. The Serraldo has at different times had different players playing different sides of the field. So Bronson Cherry used to play, I'm pretty sure, on the right edge as a centre. he's had last year. He left players in spots where we were like, why are you putting that? Why didn't you move Burton out into the centres?
Yep.
And rather than weaken it by having Alamotti, by having a second row there, when you could have just moved Burton out and then brought someone else into the middle. And it exposed us, because whenever we lost a player or got an injury, we just fell apart. We had no resilience in it. And some of it was the positioning. And he did the same this year. He's left Salmon's played both sides of the ruck, as well as in the middle. He's got people. He's got Harry Hayes playing in the middle when he was playing centre for Jersey Flegg last year.
It shows he's coaching them, Mike. It shows that
one-on-one coaching.
Yeah. So when you get a player and they say, I can only play left side, if you can coach them and expose them to things in the game where they do things bilaterally, eventually they'll get some improvement so they can work on the other side. Also, video analysis, the amount of players in the past who've come to me and said, I'm a left centre, Lee. I go, okay. And then I realise they can only tackle with the right shoulder, and I often do an up and out defence. So I switch them to the other side. And they go, oh, yeah, but I can only step off this foot. I said, well, that's okay. We'll just play. You're a bit wider in attack or a bit, So that's coaching as far as I'm concerned. So all credit to Seraldo for that.
Yeah. I just think it's been good to see how it drives us fans crazy sometimes, because I think there's another thing too where he doesn't use the last interchange when we look like we're under the pump. Against the Sharks, against the Warriors, there's been countless times, but I think this year he's never lost a game when he hasn't used an interchange. He's had one up his sleeve.
Yeah, it's always good. Yeah, always helpful.
But that's a cut. We don't know what's going on and why, but
I can find out for you.
But I guess last week, just to finish touching on last week, I was really impressed with the likes of Curtis Moran, Harry Hayes, as I said before. Another stat that Canterbury lead this year, which they've never been higher, is support play. So having that player just make that run beside the ball carrier, and they do it. And I think, do you think that draws the opposition defence? That stops the amount of 3 in and 4 in, because they've got to worry about the support player. Is that the idea?
More variety that you throw at the defensive line, the more it keeps them on the heels, right? So I always encourage players. There's actually a video on the top of my YouTube channel, the Rugby League Coach YouTube channel, just a sneaky plug there. It's called something like Advancing at the Ruck. And you'd be amazed how many things you can do just to take somebody off the scent that you are running the ball straight.
Yeah.
And I include left, right support, the way you carry the ball, the steps that you take, where you put your eyes, right? The way you receive the ball. I could go on and on and on and on and on. So the other thing about support too is a fitness thing. The other thing about support is players tend to only support if they get recognised for it. Now, that term recognition could mean in terms of statistics after the game. Well done, Mike. You pushed through 85 times today. Well done. You'll be in the team next week. But also recognised for it when somebody makes a break. The last one, most people support when they think they're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And that means they have confidence in each other. They've got confidence that Viliami Kickow might make a break and they want to be on his shoulder. They've got confidence that because the halves are going to the line square, that if they do make a semi or half break, they can be on their shoulder for an offload or whatever it may be. So, yeah, there's nice stuff building in and around that. Definitely.
I think one, so you look at a lot of, got a question about Kurt Mann. We've lost him for the season, and I'll let you answer this about him in a moment. But when he's on the field, for 2 sets every set, he's the Cam Murray of the team, the Isaiah Yeo and so on. But defensively, he's generally like the second man in and really hits hard. I've seen a number of players get up feeling sore after that little 90-kilo dude just smashed them. Do you think, what's your thoughts on Mark's question? Do you think he's going to be a big out for us?
Yeah. And I think every team that succeeds needs a mix of, first of all, ages. So 1/3 of your squad young enough that they're so hungry they don't have fear. They're physically strong and fit. Another 1/3 of your side that's really experienced and seen it all before. But the biggest third is people in their peak. So that's one of the balances. The other balance is blue chip players and guys that a term that I use called fillers, which is probably a little bit derogatory, but those fillers, what they do, they tackle and they don't miss tackles. They mop up things when some people don't turn up for their assignment.
Yeah.
They catch high balls constantly and return them. They turn up in support. Whereas some of the blue chip players sometimes need to have a breather. Like some of the best fullbacks, for example, will sit out of the game for about 15 minutes just to have a look and just see where people are defending and who's having a breather over there, who's got the hands on the hips. And then they'd inject themselves into that second 20 minutes of the half. Well, fillers don't do that. Fillers play constantly. They just go. And I think in a rugby league team, you need about 8 to 10 that really never let you down, and then the rest so the 3 to 5 are the blue chip that can break things open, something like that. Kurt Mann is basically one of the best fillers you'll ever see. He's a top-notch filler. Some of the best players we've ever had have been great fillers. So losing somebody like that, who's the glue that holds so much together, is really, really big for the overall balance and economy of the team in certain places. It's really important. So unless they get a like for like in there, that's going to be a big loss. And it might mean that some of the things we've been talking about might not be quite as high in the coming weeks, because somebody like Kurt Mann might be the person that turns up and delivers. Yeah, you know what it's like. The ball goes over your head. Well, I was a prop, right? So the ball goes over your head and goes back, and your fullback has to return it, and you have to run back 40, 50 meters. You just hope there's somebody there who can take the first couple of carries so that you can jump on the third one, so that you don't have to run back, right? They're the kind of players, and so Kurt Mann is in that sort of ilk, and it's going to be a big loss for them.
You were talking about that second and third man. In 2022 under Potter, we had Paul Vaughan, who maintained consistently statistically for 8 years in the top 5 front rowers in the game. Just did the same at the Bulldogs. Obviously, maybe not well liked or something, I'm not sure. But Max King off the back of him was fantastic. Not having him there last year and having that genuine first hit-up guy made a struggle, and that's what we thought was going to happen this year, that we didn't really have that first hit up guy. Josh Curran, like, courageous. Sam Hughes come from nowhere. Max King's become the first hit up guy. So for us to do well this year, look, there's probably another, so I'm sort of going to leave that now, but you're talking about fillers. Jacob Preston won every award for Canterbury last year. What's your thoughts on him? Because he's a Mr. Ultra Reliable as well, with and without the ball.
You've just answered the question, and I think he's the type of player that is indicative of why the Bulldogs are where they are. So I guess somebody like Kurt Mann has a lot more starch than others, so that there's a lot more starch in the team, but you can also have starch equivalency in terms of mental application throughout a game and just turning up like your supports and your kick chases and you any of your 1%ers, and so Preston falls right into that category for me, definitely.
Well, the fact that I watch every game and I never say Jacob's the best player on the field this year means we're going really well, because he was a standout last year.
I find the teams that struggle. I find the teams that struggle don't have enough starch in their team.
Yeah.
So the Broncos are a case in point. They need more starch sometimes. In that grand final last year, the Broncos needed somebody just to calm everything down. Not just Adam Reynolds saying calm down, but somebody, no, we just need to cart the ball up here. We just need to kick, we just need to kick down, walk to the scrum, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the problems of the Broncos is they haven't attempted to just sort of grind and earn it. They just seem to they throw a lot at you, even when they've been not performing. They still throw a lot at sides. But when they played Canterbury, I think they went out there with the intention that they were going to grind out a win, and the Dogs blew them off the park and hit every weak point on them. There was definitely an ambush there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But then the Titans did it the week later in that second half, blew them off the park.
Yeah. The Broncos were a mess.
Yeah, Dave, just to reiterate, we said, think man plays his role can be covered. Other than his hard-hitting, dominant tackles and the X factor he brings in attack in big games, he's likely to come up with a big play when needed. He is going to be hard to cover.
You can cover the roles. It's just that sometimes the next person just doesn't do it as well. Yeah.
Well, Salmon's going to play that role, and he throws a pretty, being a former skilled 5'8". He can throw a good ball, and he's one of those fella players in defence as well. I think Salmon's issue though is that he wants the ball. He wants to be involved. He wants to. He would love nothing more than to be a dominant half. People probably disagree with me, but I think if he was playing in the 80s, he might be like a Paul Langmack. Want to run
different players bring different qualities to a team, but they also have impacts on the balance of the side sometimes.
Before we move on into big discussion on concussions, I'd love to hear your Mark says he'd love to hear your opinion on Josh Curran. He thinks he's become an elite forward.
Loved him. I liked him at the Warriors, and when the Bulldogs signed him, I thought, "Ooh, hello." So much so that if Josh Curran was in the Warriors side last week, I think the scoreline would have been a bit tighter.
Yeah, he's all effort. His game in the Maori versus Indigenous at the start of the year, the Indigenous side would not have won that match without him. I think he played 80 minutes and he just ran himself absolutely ragged.
Before you go on to the old concussions, am I all right to talk a little bit about, to the Doggies fans watching them, that I think the big test of this whole system is next year?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. I don't think the NRL, in terms of skill, is anywhere near where it was in the early 2000s, late 90s, maybe even some of the 80s, if we're honest. And that's not me looking with rose-tinted glasses. I actually think that we are starting to produce too many players that are too robotic in many ways, and we're also too focused on the athleticism over the skill in many cases. On top of that, we've also got a salary capped competition that has created a situation where it feels like everybody gets a chance at the top. Yeah. And that's borne out by the fact that all teams, apart from the Titans and the Dolphins, have been in the grand final since 2001. So everyone's been in there apart from those two teams. And the Titans and Dolphins have been new entrants to the competition in that time. And we have to look at the Broncos making last year's grand final, what's happened this year, what happened to the Eels after they made the grand final, and what's happened to them last year and this year. The Raiders in 2019 had a decent year the year after, but it started on a downward spiral. The Broncos in 2015 went into free fall basically after that time. So there's a few examples from the last decade. What will happen I think the Bulldogs are the story of this year. I honestly do believe that so far, anyway.
Like the Warriors last year, the Cowboys the year before.
Yeah. What has happened to the Warriors this year? The Cowboys are up and down more than a yo-yo. I know we're talking late at night, but it's not past the watershed yet. I was going to use another terminology there. Kids could be watching. So next year is the litmus test for me. So we're talking about where the Bulldogs are better this year. Do you not think the NRL coaches are going to be doing that in the summer? When I worked at those NRL clubs, they often looked at the clubs that had a surge in the finals or that were high up in the ladder. And because the competition isn't equal in the sense that not everybody plays each other home and away, a lot can depend on your draw. So the whole thing about Seraldo and his quality as a coach, right now, tick, tick, tick. Let's see how he can evolve next year, because the blowtorch is going to be on him from the other teams. And we know what Gus can be like too. Now, Gus is a guy that sacked Ivan Cleary. And then look what Ivan Cleary brought to the place. Sacked Anthony Griffin when Griffin was in the playoff spot. And so I don't know if Gus has grown out of this now or something like that, but Seraldo's got to be careful. You know, he can't rest on his laurels, whatever happens this year.
Yeah, one thing I know about Gus is he's not a yes man, and he's gone on a limb for Cameron Seraldo, probably more for him more than anyone that I've ever seen. I think there's a little bit more in it, and whether that works out as a good thing or a bad thing. I think what I'm more focused on, when I saw him come to Penrith, that they bought a lot of those filler players to start and a few big signings.
Yeah.
When he come to Penrith, I think there was only Waterhouse might have been the only sort of regular local junior playing week in, week out footy. And I really believe that once he sort of employed some of the right people to build some of the pathways, and was Mark Hughes at Penrith before Gus got there?
I know Mark Hughes. So I know Mark Hughes from his time at Souths, actually, because in my various roles, I've been going to watch games and scout players 1,000 times, and it was often me and 16 NRL coaches, clubs kind of thing, particularly when I was in the school game. So I know Mark really well. He's a good friend. And going to your Gus point, never, ever got enough praise for what is going on right now at Penrith.
Yeah.
And it's probably because of his slight weakness, I think, is in what he does with first grade coaches sometimes. That's his slight weakness in terms of his football knowledge. Yeah, but his development system at Penrith is replicating it here now at the Dogs.
Yeah, I think Gus coming back to Canterbury was always going to happen. I think there's an unfinished business here. I think when he went to Penrith, that was the intention. I feel he made himself redundant there, which is always, if you're in business, that's always your goal, to make it work so well that they don't need you, which possibly, is essentially what's happened. Nothing's ever perfect, and it's definitely not perfect at Canterbury. But one thing I can say is that our what's happening with our junior pathways and the amount of young kids that they've brought in to help strengthen that and send a real bloody shiver up some of those local juniors, because a lot of them were just there over the last, since Des left, when they basically stopped investing in juniors while he was there. It became all too easy for them to reach And I'm saying it was easy, but a lot easier than other clubs for our juniors to debut. And we went from trying to buy premierships. It just wasn't going to work sustainably over time.
At least you have a plan now, and it's not going to be thrown out of the baby isn't going to be thrown out of the bathwater.
Yeah,
anytime soon, I don't think.
And we've got some good kids in that system already, and we're going to lose a lot of them too. Like the halves academy is definitely working. We've probably got 3 or 4 of the best young halves, but they're going to need to play NRL to develop.
That's right.
It's about having the right players around them, obviously. But look, I agree. Next year we'll go from being the hunter to the hunted. Whatever works, they're going to try and do it. They'll do their homework on us. They'll be out to beat us. There's some embarrassed sides this year. Like, and I think we're going to see improvement from some other teams in the competition that aren't doing so well now. They're going to improve. So it's just going to be a more close competition. We've got another stat. It's Turbo's 150th this week. We have won every single game this year against Milestones, except for Dale Finucane's 250th in round 2. Maybe because he was an ex-Bulldog who we never should have let go.
We'll have to buy this fella a TV. All he must do is look on the internet at statistics.
Oh, he's got them all. Mark said, to be fair, Lee, Serrato was under the blowtorch last year. This year he's delivered without diluting what he was about. Next year he'll be more of the same.
I would argue, Mark. First of all, thanks, Mark. I would argue he got quite an easy ride, Serraldo, last year because he was anointed. He was the second coming of Christ as a coach. I do think a couple of people, especially Buzz Rothfield and whatnot, saying what's going on. Yada yada yada. What I meant though, Mark, was the blowtorch from the other coaches. And also players lift when they know they're playing against a good side. So, for example, I think the Broncos, the blowtorch will have been applied to them significantly in the off-season by coaches. And when the players looked at the draw, they would have gone, we got a lift for that game. And it's been quite easy to turn the Broncos' aura into something that is easily broken down. I do agree, Mark, that I think what the Bulldogs have got is a bit harder to break down, and it's also sustainable. However, no system is foolproof, and coaches will even get together to work out what they do. So next year is going to be a real big year for Serraldo. And I've not analysed the draw enough to know, but he might get a tougher draw next year. Might be more games outside of Sydney and things like that. So, because of what I said about the salary cap and the way teams move around, I think the key is to try and do it year on year on year on year. And the teams that do well are the teams that have good junior systems, manage the cap well, and I think the Dogs will have that covered. And they stay near the top because of that. But then, of course, the difference between winning premierships and not winning premierships is the quality of the coaching on game day and in training, and also the quality of the players that you've got. And most games in the NRL at the final are won by a couple of game breakers. Because there's very rarely catastrophic errors. There's catastrophic errors at the bottom of the ladder, but not at the top of the ladder in the big games.
Stephen Crichton, I would argue, had three moments that were game breakers last year. So we're lucky we got one of them. I think Josh Adokar and Matt Burton's combination can be a game breaker.
And I think Penrith are suffering because I think Penrith, sorry to interrupt, I think Penrith are suffering because they've not got Stephen Crichton.
Because, it's just having that. Like Nathan Cleary's a game breaker, and Jerome Luai has the potential to be the same. And then you've got the experience of their fullback who's getting better and better and better. And some of the best kids that they've still got some of the best kids, and we haven't even seen them play yet. That are going to come into that system. Look, Michael said that he does his tipping by statistics. That's why he tipped the Tigers last week, because Manly haven't.
Can you ask
won.
him, has he got a girlfriend?
I reckon statistically she'd be a 10 out of 10.
That's a good call.
Oh, here he is, Nicholas Lloyd, one of your loyal Facebook friends.
Well, Nick, you know what, mate? He's a good mate, Nick, right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Nick, a year ago, what were you saying, mate? And this is what I'm saying. So, a year ago, everyone, Webster this, Webster that, Webster this, Webster that. This year, so ask me next year, Nick.
Well, as we say, Lee, sometimes you just got to go with the flow, and it brings people to have discussion topics and debate, right. And then people get to learn off each other.
So I know how. Yeah. When somebody's a bit good for a year, I always think, oh, let's see what they're like next year.
Yeah,
I always do, because, like I just mentioned, the Broncos, the Eels, Raiders dropped off. You know, it's quite common.
Nick Lloyd's he doesn't have a girlfriend yet.
Nick Lloyd's an old St. Greg's boy. Yeah, he's not got a girlfriend because he's looking for the tens.
Yeah, St. Greg's has got a great history. It's funny, the Nambucca team, when I did year 12, our Nambucca heads high team lost in the round of 16 to St. Greg's. We were absolutely ripped off. 2,000 people in our town, or 4,000 or something. That team had Gary Jarrett in it, Paul Donovan. Paul Donovan went and played. He came to Penrith.
Okay.
But that was in the 90s, sorry.
Yeah. I was definitely in England then.
Honestly, I don't realise how old I am, hey? Look, Mark, this is a redundant question. Is Sexton a better 7 or Hutch? I'll answer that for you.
Yeah,
Sexton is definitely a better halfback than Drew Hutchison.
Okay, I agree with him.
Yeah.
I'm not great with when I tend to watch games, I tend to look at the patterns and the thing. I'm useless with the names. I'm absolutely useless. There's only 2 teams I know every player of. Number 1, Manchester City, the soccer team, because that's my football team. Number 2, the England cricket side, because I watch them more than anyone. The NRL, I lose track. I absolutely lose track. I am useless. I am absolutely useless at it. Even when I coach, I often give players nicknames because, yeah, it's just one of those things.
Perfect. All right. What do you think about? He's not going to go on about individuals and how they play. Mark.
No. It's getting better. Kickout's line running. I always still think of Kickout as a bulldozer, though, who just runs likes to run over people. It's getting better, though, definitely. But I don't think he's absolutely sensational and consistent with it.
I'm more impressed by the way he moves from the inside out and sort of forces back lines to cramp on the edge. I think he's and he builds a lot of trust with his outside men defensively. Plus, he's the first one there for every kick chase. I'm more impressed by that stuff than him with the ball.
So can I answer Lloydie for you? I've just said you went to St. Gregory's, and everyone will think St. Gregory's can't teach people to spell. Looking at your writing, Nicholas, I don't know what acting the question is, but yes, I did. I asked last year, and this year, Seraldo. So let's ask next year.
Well, I know Nicholas was very. Nicholas is, I think he
so proud doggy.
He's a very proud doggy, and he hated us when we were losing, and he holds the club and the team to a very high standard. He doesn't like apologists, neither does Mark. And I'm probably one of those people who always looks at the green shoots and where they're coming from. But
the world was boring if we weren't all different.
I'm a supporter.
Good.
When people are down, I'm there like, come on, let's get up.
Yeah.
But there you go. All right, let's get back onto it, guys. We're going off the comments for a bit. Now we're going to talk about the the NRL and concussions. I've got a real angle here, guys. I want you to listen. I'll probably cut this video and release it as a separate as well, because, and I want to get someone who has. See, Lee's coached at high schools, coached some of the best. I think you coached Ipswich, and did you coach Logan?
Yeah, Babel Park, St. Gregory's.
St. Gregory's, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the best high schools and juniors, grassroots footy that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's also coached plenty of players that have played for the Bulldogs.
I did support. I told you in our text messages, I supported them one year because about half the team had my players in.
So Dallin and Will Opawati.
Hopper and Adam Elliott and Kiko Manu made his debut. Kieran Foran was there for a while. I worked with Kieran Foran at Manly. Darren Britt, Dean Britt's son, was there. Who else was there that year? Joe Stimson. I think they were all there the same year. But I said, oh, yeah, I'll pick them this year. So because I don't support anyone else. Yeah.
They all did their best for the Bulldogs. It was just a tough time to be at the Dogs.
Yeah. Well, they were coached by Trent Barrett, mate. What do you expect?
Oh, you're not a big fan of Trent.
Nickel like me saying that.
Were you at so when did you leave Manly?
Oh, 2010.
Oh, okay. So Des was there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Went mad at me when I left.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
And then you went to Matty Elliott.
You're not allowed to leave Des, but Des is allowed to leave you. That's how it works. So
I felt 2012 was one of the best seasons I'd seen from the Bulldogs, but I really wish that Jimmy Dimmick would have got a chance for the Dogs.
Well, have you noticed he seems to pop up in places that seem to go all right eventually? Jimmy Dimmick. There's some people, mate, that just like being assistants though too, and don't want to be anywhere near the top job.
I think when they gave it to Dean Pay, Jimmy said, "No more for me with the Dogs."
Maybe.
I used to like watching Dean Pay play, and Jim Dimmick. The 1995 Grand Final is still one of my favourite things to watch. All right, let's look at it. The war on concussions are the sin bins, reducing concussions in rugby league. So, Lee, I'm going to ask you this first question. As someone who's coached some of the biggest rugby league high schools, are head injuries and penalties for high contact reducing, in your opinion?
There's two things there, injuries and penalties. I think the game is getting better all the time at managing these things at all levels. I think the injuries are increasing because the bandwidth of what a head injury is has increased.
Okay.
So knowledge of what a concussion is, because basically you don't need to be knocked out to be concussed according to the actuality of it. So the bandwidth of knowledge about concussions has increased. So therefore, if somebody was to produce statistics, the incidences of concussion have probably increased. The game's done so much to reduce tackle heights in juniors and whatnot. Penalties for high contact, I don't think that's reducing either, because all you have to do is tickle anything above the neck and you're in trouble. I don't know if you're ready for this yet, but I actually want to talk about the rules of the game and the problem that we've got with this, because the game has created its own problem.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk about that, and I'll probably get through to that. So
okay, yeah.
We will get to that. So last week, as an example, and we shouldn't just look at 1 week, but the penalties for high contact were numerous. And numerous with sin bins and whatever else. So I'm wondering, at 99.5% of rugby league players don't play on a television screen.
No.
No. And we want to protect players. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
What initiatives do you think the NRL and Super League have helped tackle brain injury reduction at the elite level at least.
Well, I'd like to use Super League as an example.
Yep.
If you think the NRL is bad for crackdowns, the Super League is on steroids with it. And I think even at the start of the year, it was possibly even tougher. It's probably mellowed a little bit and come back to the pack a little bit with it. But you literally could not do anything. A lot of commentators were up in arms. The NRL, can you remember the Magic Round in
a couple of years ago?
22, was it?
Yep.
Or 21?
It's 22.
And Volandis did a high tackle crackdown. The game went into meltdown. So the old fossils that run the Daily Telegraph and the media here and the media there, Gus Gould was in this category too, talking about how we were ruining the game. What Volandis was trying to do was future-proof the game, because what has happened in England is that a load of ex-players are coming up with lawsuits now about the way they were treated for concussion back in the 80s and the 90s. Gus has been on 100% footy a few times in the past and said, we keep talking about this wave of this tsunami of litigation that's going to come through, yet it hasn't come through yet. I'm afraid on that, Gus is a dinosaur, because that will come in this country. And it's already started a little bit in AFL land. It will only get worse. And rugby league, unfortunately, isn't an establishment sport around the world. Aussies in particular tend to forget how powerful rugby union is because their wallabies are absolute trash. The game of rugby union is huge around the world, and it has influence far beyond anything that rugby league can muster. And they are so stringent on high tackles because they want little Johnny, it gets about old Johnny, but little Johnny who's watching with his parents to think that's a safe sport I can play. I want to go and play it at my local club. Now, so Volandis was trying to future-proof the game, and the game just really jumped on him like he was some kind of ogre that was trying to threaten the sport. And you still see comments like this about how the game is getting ruined, etc., etc., etc. Now, I have some conflicting views about this. Just because two people get into a WWE ring and wrestle and do horrible things to each other, or pretend to, doesn't mean that you can go and do that in your classroom in a school and get the steel chair and put it over somebody's head, because what happens is you get suspended from school, or you might even have a police incident if you do it in a pub.
Yeah.
Just because it's happening at the top level doesn't mean it's going to happen at the lower level all the time. And it depends how it's policed. Now, if the top level at the NRL is refereed like Origin, where we tend to let things go a little bit.
Yep.
And if people end up getting clonked on the head and whatever else, there's a horrible thing, but fans actually like seeing that, right? And they like to get irate. We used to love the biff.
Players love it too. They love the contact.
Right? When you're an adult, you can sign disclaimers that say, I am happy to potentially get my head bashed, right? So I don't necessarily totally subscribe to this. What happens in the NRL will happen at juniors, because the junior game can be officiated differently. You can say anything above the nipple is a high tackle if you want. And this now brings me to the rules. Can I talk about them now? Is that all right? Or do you want to wait? Because
I've got quite a few questions.
Yeah, keep going.
We'll keep it there.
This could be an 8-hour podcast, mate.
No, that's all right. Well, it won't be, but I think, look, the Stephen Crichton incident. I'll just get a 1-word or 2-word answer from that. Do you think he should have been sin binned? Forget about consistency, just the incident that happened. And do you think he should have been suspended?
Based on current interpretations, he probably shouldn't have been in trouble.
Okay.
Do I agree with those? Different question.
Yeah. So based on consistency, it would have been fair, okay? And no one really would have batted an eyelid.
No.
Was the incident seen by the referee or the fans when it happened?
Don't think so.
No.
You know what would solve this? You know what would solve this in one swoop, and Union does this better? Sin bin them, and then decide if it's a red or a yellow when they sat down.
Yeah, I'm probably going to move away from that. Like, so we'll have different opinions on that, which is great because this is what we want. I think that's trying to manufacture the perception of it. The fact of the matter is if Stephen Crichton, if that tackle happens in New South Wales Cup, right, at the elite level, but it's not televised, so there's no bunker. No one's held accountable. There's no penalty. There's no sin bin, and there's no suspension.
No, play up.
And for me, that is the imperative thing here at play.
Yeah.
Not one of these sort of actions are happening for my gut feel. I don't have the exact statistic. 40 to 50% of all penalties and punishments for high contact. I'm not talking about high shots. I'm talking about you got two players in a defensive block. They can't wrap their arms.
Yeah.
The player falls into their shoulder. The only reason we're talking about this is because of the category 1, which is why I want to talk about the rules as well with you. Certain rules to make the game fair, but also protect the brain injury. So for 99.5% of rugby league matches out there, the NRL's managing perception based on replays. But for the guys play 200 games for the young cherry pickers or the Junee Diesels or the Nambucca Roosters, he's not getting protected from that contact.
No. And that's why I said the rules should be different. That's why I said the rules should be different. So,
well, if they want to protect it, they've got to change the rules. And then how do they do it? How do they bring the legs tackle back?
Mate, but again, Union, I don't know how well you know Union, but at most levels, they'll do uncontested scrums if people without the qualifications to be in that scrum can fight for a scrum. You don't see uncontested scrums in the Six Nations or the World Cup so there's different rules. So I think this is far easier managed than some people are making it, because I don't think that somebody playing in the Sunshine Coast A grade should be necessarily refereed to the same standard as what's going on in the NRL, because the NRL players train more in one day than some of those players do in a month in A grade. You know, it could be any grade comp. I'm not having to go at the Sunshine Coast. So, it's not an apple and apple, is it? You know, it's and that's what I'm getting at, mate. It's the NRL, the Super League, and Origin are our products, right? Just like the WWE is the product. But like I said, the rules if you want to replicate that in your classroom at school, you'll get suspended. If you want to replicate that in the street, you should probably get arrested. But it depends how good the police are in your area. But you get my point, you know. If you different rules for different places, and we probably don't have the problem. And I think we're trying to do a one size fits all. The reality is the blokes that play in the NRL, the ladies that play in the NRLW are playing a serious sport. Nobody ever talks about the training that they're doing and the amount of training that they're doing and the damage they're doing to their bodies and the way they are building bodies that are far bigger than the way God intended them to walk around the earth and run around the earth, and they're piling on the muscle, and some of them don't have balanced bodies, and we don't know yet, all these collisions in general, what damage they're going to be doing to players when they become 50, 60, 70, because we're constantly trying to speed up the game. So just because it's above the neck, we start to look at it a bit differently. But what about the rest of the body too? And the reality is these players sign up for this. And I'm sure there's legal eagles who can create paperwork that says if you sign it, and away we go. Doesn't mean
so
it has
waivers,
to happen.
no litigation.
Yeah.
See, this is why I wanted to put the park footy test on it, because Group 9 is still, and all these other levels, there's still a pathway to, and bush footy is going backwards. That needs to change. And I think, and I've got a whole, and you're probably the same with conferences and allocations of country areas and everyone developing bush talent.
It's so ridiculous. We ask people who do a full week of work on a building site or whatever they might be doing, we ask them to play 80 minutes of football, even though they probably only made training once that week and it was the team run. And we ask them to play 80 minutes just because the game is played at that level, for that long at different levels. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. Now, it's probably because of records or something like that, but, we can reduce that. And we don't have to have this one size fits all for all the game. Our juniors should be encouraged not to clonk each other around the head anyway, just because that's the right thing to do. And people who are playing at the slightly lower levels, you just change the rules somewhat so that they are protected. And so that Blind Freddy could see if it was above the armpit, penalty. And the players will adjust. The players will adjust in the NRL if the referees just stick with something for a while. But it's such a topic. We could go in so many different directions.
My whole point is that they're managing perception, which isn't the reality for what most people actually have to deal with. So referees, anyone who's investing in referees to make them professional, and a shout out to the Bulldogs who are trying to create a professional referees association, and investing heavily in that to produce the next referees. And there's this is in every WA has that as well. Like we need more of that sort of stuff. But you've got a situation where high contact, where it's a player drops into a stationary defender who's moving slightly laterally. When you taught to tackle, you don't need to wrap your arms. You can tackle with your shoulder in perfect technique. I saw perfect technique that we didn't see an incident until it was replayed by the bunker.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that, I think we've got to change the rules so that the Warriors aren't, so that, a category 1 can be replaced. And a severely injured player can be replaced. Maybe we need to reduce the 10 meters so that there isn't as much of that. But I also look at it and go, the waiver thing, you've got a situation where you've got the fella running off the back fence, can turn his shoulder, can put up the bumper, and the defender is supposed to be held totally accountable if they have a head clash.
That incident led to somebody's death about a decade ago. Ackerman in Queensland. If the wrong judge would have been on, not the wrong judge, but a different judge had been on that, he could have asked, or she could have asked, some real serious questions. What license do these players have to tackle? So there's all sorts we could go into. There's so many junior coaches out there don't even know how to teach their kids how to tackle. We have a tackle ready program in the NRL, which I really applaud, but unfortunately, it's only for 6s and 7s. So if you join the game at 13, like I did, I don't get a tackle ready program.
Well,
I start playing against big brutes.
Most of my friends played soccer and then went to league at 13.
So there's still holes in it, you see. So the way we tackle impacts collisions, and that brings me to the rules when you're ready for them.
Yeah. So why can't you shoulder charge someone who is using their shoulder when they've got the ball?
Yeah.
Maybe the collision, and concussions are going to get caused from someone smashing someone in the sternum too.
That's right.
The contact.
It's a tough game. It's a tough game.
It's got to be a waiver, doesn't it?
Most injuries come from falling,
Going in low with bad technique.
Falling. And depending on the ground you're playing on, you can actually fall on the ground and get concussed.
Yeah.
So maybe we should play on...
Just jarring on the ground.
Yeah, maybe we should play on sand.
We'll get to these rules really quickly in a sec. Just got to get myself... So you're basically saying that we can... I feel we already have mod league and there's not too many higher shots in that. I feel that, but what I'm talking about is your level below, like your New South Wales Cup, QRL, your Jersey Flags, where only 1 or 2 games are televised. They don't have the luxury.
No. Do
you think we should be changing the rules for that level?
I think we just probably need to just lower the tackle height a bit. Because it's coming, like it's happening in England in Union. It's happening in League as well over in England. It will come. It'll come.
AFL did this years ago where they just made it if the ref sees a high contact, and it was above here. So, so even below, like I think above the waist, even it was. It was a high tackle. Whether you meant it or not, no problem. Whether the person got injured or not, didn't matter. And no one argued with it. No problem.
I actually think some players, I really do think this. Some players are being instructed to lead with a head at times. To get the head a bit lower so that they get clonked on it. Because some players won't care.
I've seen Stephen Crichton do it. I've seen Daly Cherry Evans do it. I've seen Tommy Turbo do it.
Just run with the ball.
When they've needed
down.
A penalty.
My head.
Just get someone.
When Sualihi got sent off in Origin 1, Reece Walsh was virtually horizontal. And yes, Sualihi could have done some things better, obviously. But I thought to myself after that, this is dangerous because honestly, we could all do a Reece Walsh going into tackle.
Well, with the eye test, though, it doesn't matter what game I've played, whether we've played it at any level, watched it on any game. If you're a referee and the touch judge are seeing that contact, and they're probably going to send them off, without a need of a replay. I think what a send-off is. So let's get to the rules. I'll ask you a rule, and then you can sort of elaborate it a bit. I think there should be an 18th and 19th man as a free replacement to any category 1 or any sort of major injury where a player where they're being ruled out. And hopefully that doesn't get abused. Keep the same amount of interchanges.
It will get
and
abused,
I think that
I'm just saying.
I think the bunker should not be allowed to send somebody off for incidental contact with mitigating circumstances, which is a lot of those from the Manly game, the Bulldogs game. And I believe, a send-off still a send-off. If they see a send-offable offence, and sometimes there'll be debate about that. But if you get rid of that sin bin and you make sure that the team that what that happens to is able to be replaced. And the last one I would say is that if you stay down, you have to be assessed no matter what. They're the rules that I would change.
Yeah, I don't immediately. I don't disagree with anything you've said, right? Because whatever gets brought into the games, coaches will try and manipulate. Okay, so we've had all sorts of rumours about what's happened in the past in terms of blood capsules for the blood bin and yada. So obviously, if you stay down because somebody's potentially been near your head, then you should go off. Is what you're saying, and I agree with that because that would then rule out that as an option for
same with the hip drop,
unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't disagree. Anything you said, I don't disagree with immediately.
I think
under scrutiny,
there remove a lot of debate.
Issues, but yeah.
And the other thing is that they have waivers that passes the mum test from the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s.
Yeah.
You are going to get punch drunk if you play rugby league.
Yeah.
You're likely to get so for the NRL, but we're managing perception. They either change the rules for these, as you were suggesting, to lower the level, or sign a waiver. You cannot sue the game if someone tries. But if someone does a Les Boyd with a cocked elbow, a premeditated attack to the head, they might be up for assault, and not be protected by the game, if that makes sense.
I mean, high tackles have always been illegal, so
exactly. And some used to get, like Terry Lamb didn't do that to Ellery Henley. That didn't happen because
it was a Bulldogs.
The ref didn't see it.
Yeah, yeah. Ellery shouldn't have put his head there, obviously.
I felt sorry for the Tigers. The next year against the Raiders, I really did. All right, so what do you think we need to change in the rules, Lee? What do you think is going to help?
Right. Do you remember earlier you said the Bulldogs catch? Most teams catch when they tackle. That automatically brings your arms and your digits and your everything up high, doesn't it? Yeah? I assume you're of a similar vintage as me, age-wise, and when we started playing rugby league, the first thing we were taught was to tackle around the legs. Okay?
Yes.
Of course, knees can concuss you as well, by the way. Okay? But because most people are on their feet in these tackles, there's the chance of getting clonked around the head more than if you try and tackle low, etc. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you get absolutely no reward in rugby league for that low tackle where you go cheek to cheek, turn them on the back. You get absolutely no reward for that.
No.
Yeah, it used to be the textbook tackle. If somebody did that in rugby league now, the play the ball would be like that. Because the refs say off him. Okay. So coaches have responded. Coaches have responded by keeping players on their feet for as long as they can.
Yep.
To dance with them and then manipulate them to the ground. Okay. Well, if there's no reward for that in the rules, then they won't do that. So they'll be forced to go lower. It's pretty simple. And all that's happened is the game lost track of this maybe 20 to 30 years ago. And then Storm are seen as the guys who started the wrestling things. And then everyone tried to wrestle and be better wrestlers.
Yep.
That's it. The game has created this. And they're always trying to deal with the system, not the symptom, not the cause.
Yeah.
And the cause is the way we tackle and what we get rewarded for. Now, if every tackle went under the height of the ball carrying arm, so between elbow and hip, if every tackle went there, we'd have far less attackers getting clonked around the head. So, in ideal terms, that would be 50% of the potential injury gone, because all the attackers will be safe in utopian eyes. It's just the defender then that takes the risk. What do you reckon?
Well, I reckon there has to be another change to go with that. I think you have to be rewarded for, let's say, a one-on-one legs tackle. So if they said that it's called dominant and the player's got 4 seconds to get from the ground to in front of the player, and then the ref says play it.
You know, in juniors, mate, you know, if a kid does a tackle like that, you know, if in juniors, you know, if a kid does a tackle like that this weekend, all the crowd will go, great tackle. So it's still there. It's still there in our game.
We love it. We love that.
But at the NRL, we've made it obsolete.
What if we?
The only time you see a tackle like that is if somebody's shifted the ball and the centre's they've got outside the centre and they do a passive tackle. That's the only time, or a wing. That's the only time.
Stephen Crichton's really good at it.
Yeah, it's the rules. But in the middle, you never see a passive tackle.
I used to watch Brent Tate.
Nor should you, I suppose. But
I don't know if you remember Brent Tate, but he used to do
with his neck thing on.
Yeah, he was the master at doing the legs tackle, and he count to 3 and just beat the penalty by a split second every time, and have enough time for his defenders to get someone at marker.
If they increase that to say 5 seconds,
even 4, slightly half a second above, and then people, they do it at training all the time. The push up and straight up.
Yeah,
you get them around the legs and reward them for it.
Yeah.
Now, if they've done certain things with the play of the ball, which keeps the ball in play and less errors, then you have that little bit. You're not having this. You're not having as many stoppages to review whether something was high or not. So the fatigue still stays there.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned the meterage before. They could reduce the meterage if they wanted to. And the other thing is this old theory about the interchange. So if we have less interchanges, more people get fatigued. The problem with fatigue is people then put their limbs and their heads in places where they probably shouldn't because they're tired. So,
yeah.
People more expert than us probably need to talk about the medical reasons for that. But, this could be fixed by the rules, and have a look at the causes, not the symptoms.
Yeah, it's the root cause always, and it's and the long-term sustainability of that, because sometimes we don't see the problems till 10 seasons later.
That's right.
You talk about, like, even when you're talking about going off track a little bit, but the Bulldogs next year will be a different kettle of fish, and that's where we'll see their value. Look at how good they're going, because but we also see rule changes, little tweaks of the rules, which have massive impacts on squads that have been hired, and you go out and employ all these people, and then they tweak the rule.
The 6 again rule has completely changed the game. Yeah. And you talk about the rules going down into the lower grades. Some A grade players who are doing 6 agains, it's absolutely creasing them to do 12 tackles on the trot.
Mark said, Abrara, Les, he said lots of things. Lee, which 2 teams do you think will be in the grand final?
Melbourne will be one of them. I've got a sneaky about Cronulla,
Yeah, I've liked Cronulla a lot all year, and
the worst thing they can do is put Nico Hines back in that side. Straight away. They've got to wait. They've got to bring him in when they need something, because they're accumulating points in the attacking zone and defending very well too. Nico Hines isn't the best defender on earth.
If he comes in and goes full pelt, he plays a lot better. He has been in that game 1 of Origin, I've never seen a player more timid in everything he did.
I agree.
And it's good that he's had this break from his point of view, and he just needs to get back to being that big body that runs on an angle and attracts 2 players and sends his second row through, But defensively, everyone.
And he's not halfback. Not consistent enough. Not.
Braden Trindle's probably he's a really good footballer as well, I believe. But Mark says, what about a legs tackle means a player playing the ball must wait till the tackler is in a legal marker position? Yeah, that's what we're saying, buddy. So
you know what will happen then. Sorry, mate. You know what will happen then, Mark? The markers will be instructed to be slow to get to marker. So you'll have changed the problem again. You've changed the focus of the coaches. So the players will get off even slower. to get to marker. It'll take them half an hour to get to marker. So that's the problem with that determination. So we might be better going with the time. I see doggy style there. I just said legs tackle are great. It will open up so many more offloads. And wouldn't we love to see some offloads in the game, though, doggy style?
Robert Ralph.
Wouldn't we love to see more?
We want to see Robert Ralph offloading in the line to Rod Silver.
Yeah. And then
That's
that puts more challenge on the defence. I mean, you don't see as many chips over the top anymore and things like that. Those things have gone away as the games become more and more robotic. So this would unroboticize it, if that's a word. So
yeah, and bring back that situation of players being wrong-footed and accidentally coat hangering people again.
Yeah, doggy
style.
I
don't think that should
doggy style 1935. Does that mean that's when doggy style was born, or?
Yeah. Want to see more offloads and more doggy style? A bit. It's all good. Timothy Gray said hello. He's been on before. G'day, Tim. Welcome
mate,
back.
How are you?
He says bring back Dean Pay and Jim Dimmy.
What, to play or?
Mark Jason Taylor, so our next St Gregory's boy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think Jason has added to the coaching staff of the Dogs?
Attacking nous, and also halfback coaching, probably. I would have thought. Absolutely, I think that's an easy answer. Also, I don't think anybody doubted Jason Taylor's coaching ability ever, really. It was more some of the bigger picture things that maybe caused JT some issues in his coaching career.
Yeah. I think he's happy being an assistant.
Mm-hmm. He also did some NYC for a while, if I remember rightly. So he just, he's a coach. He's probably been coaching for close to 2 decades now. So, very
he's a smart player too.
Yeah.
And he had really good tackling technique around the legs.
Mm-hmm.
Great left and right step.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely added something to the Bulldogs as well. And what I've liked about Serrato is he's praised all his coaching staff. He's not hid from that. The other thing I liked about Serrato, and I said this the other week, was the fact that Doggies fans were going crazy. So when Mark was talking about the blowtorch, he was talking about us Doggy fans. There was most of us were angry at him. I wasn't. I was skeptical about him coming, but once he came, I'm on board with it. But he doesn't make excuses, and he didn't complain about bad calls last year because he didn't believe we defended well enough to earn the right to get the 50-50s. So that's something I like about him.
Fair enough.
All right. You got any thoughts on getting back to, we're talking about the concussions and stuff. You got any other thoughts on that? Or do you feel we've covered it?
I just think people are in denial if they don't think it's going to become more and more of a problem. I left Maple Park in 2021 as the head coach, and it has changed hugely since then. 2021 was only three years ago.
Yeah.
And 3 years isn't a long time in the evolution of any sport that was started in the 1800s. In 1800s, 1895 in England, not 1908 like Aussies think. And the rapid change doesn't seem to be slowing in any way. There hasn't been any major articles or breakthroughs about CTE or anything recently, but I've studied this quite significantly, and we're only a month or two away from one, I think, because that tends to be what happens. They come out periodically, and obviously university studies and medics and whatnot, they don't rush through studies. They take their time. So it won't be long until something bigger comes out from another area of medicine or another sport, and it'll all start again. And I firmly believe Volandis wants to future-proof the game. That's why he did the high tackle crackdown. He backpedaled somewhat, though, because the game tried to eat him alive. But he's also built up a big war chest of money. Now, that could well be to protect the game, because some people might go for it.
Yeah.
It depends how these cases go in England, I think. So,
well, hopefully they can get some sort of mitigation in there. I don't even know what the word is, but
well, I know some people. I know some players in England, right? I know one in particular who's part of this, and apparently he used to go out fighting every weekend in pubs. So, when did he get his head knocked?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And most rough and tumble people, most rough and tumble kids get some kind of head knock in their lives. So I'm not saying that. I think a lot will depend on these court cases. But obviously, the more people that pass away, the more some people lend their brains to, not lend their brains, give their brains to research, for further research. And we're going to go on more and more and more as the years go on. There's so much more in the last 3 years. There's been so much more going in the last 3 years. And I put it this way, I would be a very different coach if I went back to that school job right now, knowing what we know now about concussion. Like, yeah, we did what we thought was right all the time. We covered our backsides in terms of legality and everything, so there's no dramas there. But yeah, it was a badge of honor for many years. Getting a head knock was a badge of honor in our sport, but we didn't know any better, did we? Now we do. So
I suppose James Graham said something like someone who's going to suffer from that, who's already suffering, and he said some things are worth dying for. Now that's his thoughts. He's lived his dream playing rugby league. He loved everything about it. Wouldn't change it for the world. I guess I just look at and that point about people getting hit in the head. I went over a Volkswagen and landed on my head riding my bike because the chain slipped. It's lawyers on both. There's lawyers lining up on both sides of this to make a shitload of money in taking it to court and defending it.
The fella from the Bulldogs, from the Bulldogs who is suing. Where's his case at now?
No idea. I don't see him getting very far from that. That was over the wrestling and stuff. But the fact that he went and trained for days after. Look, I just think he's someone who, to me, wore his heart in his sleeve the way he played, and there was just some things. He was, I think he got a lot of bad advice, personally. Yeah,
I always said at the time that it'll be very interesting to see how this comes out. I'm not going to criticize the player because somebody's perception is their reality. So,
Yeah. Well, that's this whole thing, perception, and perception was the perception of NRL is that it's trying to do everything to protect high tackles. From what you see in the Hollywood sense of it. But for 99.5% of people who want to get their kids to play rugby league, if it's played under the same rules like it is, forget about mod league and that for the juniors. But from junior reps, it's the same game.
That's right.
They're basically walking into a false sense of security, aren't they? Because they're not going to have that ability to penalise or make people accountable for high contact.
Yeah. Yep, quite possibly, yeah. Yeah,
so
definitely.
So I think unless, they brought in mod league, they changed some rules, maybe we do have to lower things. But if we've got to take something away or modify something, we have to do something else to reward the fan, reward the players.
That's right, yeah.
bring back the legs tackle is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Replace players that are injured.
Should we run the game, mate? Do you reckon we should try and overthrow the commission?
Mate, it's hard not to be a hypocrite at any point. Look, that's the funniest thing for me is watching journalists and ex-players talk about like criticizing people who have done something wrong off the field, knowing the shit that they've done in their own circles. It's hilarious. But Mark says there's not a government on the planet that will rub out an entire culture of contact sport, whether it be league, union, or gridiron. You might well be right, Mark.
When the Tory government are in England, most of them come from the southern end of the country and are the elites, and
the rugby.
They are about rugby. So, league is so far down the chain there, it's untrue. And in this country, we're a big sport on the eastern seaboard. Go to Melbourne and see what they think of our best players down there. Walk the high street and ask. So I understand what you're saying, Mark, and I agree. They won't wipe out contact sport, but they can minimize it. They can put rules around it. One
last thing before we go, because I really appreciate your time tonight, mate, and you've got a lot of work to do.
Not tonight.
Like I do.
Tonight.
Yeah, I've got to go myself. I've got more work to do, but I lost my train of thought too.
Oh, well, Lucas's question here, do the NRL have too many rule changes during the season? Yes, they do, absolutely. It's actually unfair. It destroys the integrity of a season if you change the rules all the time. Yeah. And you've then said they make it so much harder for the refs. Yes, they do. The refs have got so much going on in their ears. And yes, they are overcoached. And the bunker, don't get me started.
Where do you think the Bulldogs will finish? Do you reckon they can make a prelim?
That question is all about who they'll meet. So answering that question is about who they'll meet. And that's what we don't necessarily understand yet. So if they're capable of it, yes. They're capable of a prelim. Definitely. Okay. That'd be a great season for them if they did that. How far do I think they'll go? They won't necessarily bow out straight away.
Mark, just wondering how would you go on The Voice? It's currently
brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant.
He's English, mate. He's not Scottish.
Just ask me.
He sounds good when he's at Manchester City watching a game, singing. He's all sound good then. What about when you go away to Liverpool and they're ahead? What's that like? Have you ever?
It's a conspiracy.
All right, last one. Rugby League is the toughest sport in the world. Accidents happen. The players know what they're getting into and are very well paid to do what they love.
Yeah, at the NRL level, they are, and Super League, yeah.
I say that's the mum test. Mum knows you're going to be punch drunk if you play league.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, play soccer. But
yeah, my mum never wanted me to play it. Never came to a game. I think she came to one.
Oh, wow. Oh. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry if I didn't get to everyone's contributions. Thank you so much, Lee, the Rugby League coach. Go check it out. If you want to learn more about the game of Rugby League and more about the fantasy stats, more about the integrity, about what coaches are looking at, go check that out as well and actually learn more about how to play the game of Rugby League. If you've got any kids who are interested or if you've got any friends or juniors, there's lots of stuff that they can learn from there. And
sorry, for your listeners and viewers, I announce this every week on my podcast, but I don't advertise it anywhere else. If people go to rugbyleaguecoach.com.au /coach, on that page, there's some free upgrade offers, and I don't advertise them unless somebody listens to a podcast. So if people want to get a good deal, go to that rugbyleaguecoach.com.au/coach. Have a look what's on there. If it interests you, I'll do you a good deal.
And I won't be getting a cut. Don't worry. It's not a paid advertisement.
I did sneak. See how I just subtly snuck in a few plugs there while we're doing it.
I'm happy to, mate. You do a good job. You're a servant to rugby league, the game we love.
Now, with any of these comments and quotes, are they available on the YouTube channel? Will they be underneath there, or I can try and answer them at a later date if you want to get them to me somehow? Send them on an email or something, or whatever.
I think you can watch with the chat open.
Good evening, Valerio.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff on there. You can go through and have a look. Yeah, we can't get to it all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're doing a long one. But yeah, if there's any way you can get them to me, mate, I'll answer them in due course for people.
Perfect. All right. We'll stay on.
If they listen to the Rugby League Coach podcast next week, I'll answer them on there, right? But you've still got to listen to this one. Don't discard this guy.
All right, guys. Lee, I'll keep you there for 1 second. Goodbye to everyone else. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank
Loved
you,
it.
everyone. Cheers. Thanks, mate.
Beautiful. Go the doggies.